Treasure Island, Episode 2, Part 1, The Sea Chest. I told my mother everything. We were very frightened and did not know what to do. If I went to see Dr. Livesey, as the captain had told me to do, I would have to leave my mother alone, and her safety was my priority. On the other hand, it also seemed too dangerous for us to stay at the inn. At last, we decided what we ought to do. First, we needed to go to the nearest village to get help. Then, we would come back to open the chest and take the money the captain owed us before anyone else came for it. But when we got to the village, no one wanted to return with us to the Admiral Benbow. Some of the men had heard of the terrible Captain Flint, and others had seen strange men on the road that day, as well as a ship in nearby bay. They were all too frightened to leave their houses. We decided to go back to the inn alone to carry out our plan. One man gave me a gun in case we were attacked, and a boy said he would ride to the doctor's house to get help. When we arrived back at the inn, nothing had changed. We locked the door, lit a candle, and holding each other's hands, we walked into the room where the captain lay. I went down on my knees on the floor. Near the dead man's hand was a small, round, black piece of paper, the black spot. I picked it up. Written on one side were the words, "You have till 10 tonight." Luckily for us, it was still only 6 o'clock. I anxiously looked in his pockets for the key to the chest, but I found nothing. Then, finally, I saw it on a piece of string around his neck. I cut the string, and we went quickly upstairs to find the chest. It was old and well used like any other sailor's chest, and it had the letter B burnt on it. "Give me the key," said my mother, and although the lock was difficult to open, she turned it and opened the lid in a moment. At the top, there was a carefully folded suit. Under that, there were too many things to count. Some pistols, a large piece of silver, an old Spanish watch, and many more small objects. At the very bottom of the chest lay a packet covered in cloth and a heavy bag that held gold coins. "Let's take what you owed us," said my mother, "and not a penny more." And she began to count out the coins. It was a long, difficult job because the coins were all of different countries and sizes. When we had counted out about half of our money, I suddenly heard the tap-tapping of the blind man's stick on the road. We sat, holding our breath. Then the stick banged on the inn door, and we heard the handle being turned, and then silence. At last, the tapping started again, but this time it became quieter and quieter as the man walked away. Not long after that, we heard a whistle blow far up on the hill. That was enough for us. "I haven't counted enough to pay his bill, but I'll take what I have," she said, jumping to her feet. And I will take this instead of the rest of the money, I said, picking up the packet covered in cloth. We went as quickly as we could down the dark stairs and out onto the road. We were on our way back to the village when we heard the sound of someone running, first in the distance and then getting nearer. You must take the money and run on. I feel I'm going to faint, my mother said, and then she fell on my shoulder. Luckily, we were near a little bridge, and with some difficulty, I managed to pull her under it. Treasure Island, Episode 2, Part 2, The Last of the Blind Man. Moments later, 7 or 8 men came running towards the inn. In front, there were 3 men holding hands. Then, in the weak moonlight, I could see that in between the other 2 was the blind man. "Go in," he cried. Several men went to the door of the inn and, finding the door unlocked, went inside. 2 of them stayed outside with the terrible blind man. There was moment's silence, then a cry of surprise, and a voice shouting from the house, "Bill is dead!" The blind man swore. "Look in his pockets, then find the chest," he cried. A little while later, one of the upstairs windows was thrown open, and someone shouted out to the blind man, "Phew! Someone been in the chest." "Isn't it there?" he asked angrily. "The money is here, but there's none of Flint's writing," the man replied. "It is these people of the inn. It is that boy. Why didn't I take his eyes out?" cried the blind man Pew. "They were here earlier. The door was locked when I came. Go and find them." Just then came the whistle we had heard before, and it came from the direction of the village. "Dirk's blowing the whistle again," said one of the men. "That means he's seen someone coming. Let's leave." "Keep looking," Pew shouted angrily. "The boy and his mother can't be far away. We almost have it, and you want to run away? You will be as rich as kings if we find it." "Hang it, Pew. Why don't we go? We've got the bag of the money," said one. Pew started trying to hit the man with his stick. As the fight went on, the sound of horses galloping came from the top of the hill. The sailors quickly stopped fighting and ran away, leaving Pew anxiously tapping up and down the road alone. Just then, 4 or 5 horses appeared in the moonlight, galloping down the hill towards the inn. Pew screamed, and not knowing in which direction to go, ran right under the first horse. Down he went with a terrible cry. The horses came to a stop, and I recognized the boy that had gone from the village to get Dr. Lavisley. With him were several law officers who he had met on the way to the doctor's house. Pew was dead. We went back to find my mother and carry her to the village. There she recovered and well after a little while. The law officers rode on the nearby bay. They were too late. The strange ship had already gone, and probably the rest of the pirates with it. When the leader of the men Mr. Dance returned from the bay, I told him everything that had happened. They wanted something more than the money, you say? Well then, Hawkins, what on earth were they trying to find? He asked me. I believe I have what they want in my pocket, I replied, and I would like to get it to Dr. Livesey so that it will be safe. Oh, of course, boy, he said. Yes, I shall go there myself and tell him all about this. Why don't you come with me? Treasure Island, Episode 2, Part 3, The Captain's Papers. We found Dr. Livesey at the hall, where he was having dinner with the square. A servant led us through the gatehouse to the library, where both men were smoking their pipes next to the fire. The squire was a tall, strong man with eyebrows that were very black and moved a lot when he spoke. Come in, Mr. Dance, he said in a loud voice. Good evening, said the doctor. What brings you both here today? Mr. Dance stood up and told his story, and then two gentlemen listened with surprise and interest. And so, Jim, said the doctor, when Mr. Dance had finished, you have the thing they wanted. Here it is, sir, I said, and gave it to him. He held it for a moment and then put it carefully in his pocket. Squire, he said, Mr. Dance will go home, but I think Hawkins should stay at my house tonight, and we should give him dinner. And so I ate wonderful dinner at the hall while we talked. I've heard of this man Flint, said Mr. Trelawney, the squire. He was the most dangerous pirate that ever sailed. I've seen his ship with terrible eyes painted on its sails. But did he have money? Asked the doctor. Money, cried the squire. Haven't you heard the story of his treasure? What were those scoundrels looking for, if not money? Just tell me, replied the doctor. If I have information in my pocket about where Flint buried his treasure, what does that mean we should do? What does it mean? Cried the squire. If we have information you are talking about, it means that I will go to Bristol and buy a ship, and we will find the treasure, if we have to spend a year looking for it. Very well, said the doctor, and put the packet on the table in front of him. Now, if Jim agrees, I'll open the packet, and he started to open the cloth that covered it. Inside were two things, a book and a roll of paper. The book was full of names, numbers, and dates. This is Bill Bond's account book, cried the squire. The names are the ships that he sank, and the numbers show the money he took from them. The doctor carefully opened the rolled up paper, and we saw a map of an island, complete with the latitude and longitude, names of hills and bays, a large hill in the center named the Spyglass, and every detail that a captain would need to bring a ship in safely. There were 3 red crosses. One was in the southwest and had 3 words next to it. Bulk of treasure here. The second red cross showed where some silver was buried, and the third, some weapons. There were detailed notes and instructions on the back of the map. I did not understand the map, but the squire and Dr. Livesey were very excited. By tomorrow evening, I shall be in Bristol, said the squire. Then in 3 weeks' time, we will be sailing the best ships there, with the most efficient crew in England. Hawkins, you will be a cabin boy, and you, Livesey, the ship's doctor. I will be the admiral. We will take my men, Redruth, Joyce, and Hunter too. We will have good winds, a quick voyage, and no difficulty at all in finding the treasure, and more money that we can imagine. Trelawney, said the doctor, I will go with you, and I think Jim will too. But there's only one man I'm afraid of. And who's that? Asked the squire with a terrible look on his face. You, replied the doctor, because you can't keep a secret. We are not the only men who know about this document. Those men who attacked the inn tonight are not far away, I am sure. And according to Jim, they want that money. We must be very careful until we are on our way, and we must not say a word about this map to anyone. Livesey, replied the squire, you have a point. I will be as silent as the grave.